So we have the full spoilers for chapter 25 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, and let's just say that this meme has finally come true. Yes, Momoshiki has returned and Boruto has an interesting proposition for him. So we have a lot to discuss, but of course, let's start from the top. So the cover for this month features Himawari and Kurama, and the title says, "To Those Girls," which is referenced later on in the chapter. So the first few pages are pretty much what we covered in the prior video, which is Moegi coming back to life. We then skip over to the Sand Village and Kankura says, yeah, Shinki is back to normal and Gaara is safe too. He is badly hurt, but it's not life-threatening. Because of the sealing jutsu, he still hasn't regained consciousness. He should wake up soon. So apparently Shinki is back, and this of course is confirmed by the text, but also because, they needed Shinki to release the sealing jutsu, so obviously Shinki is fully operational at this point in time. Now Sai then tells Shikamaru that the feudal lord is calling for him, and he says, yeah, I'll be right there. We then skip over to the Moegi team, and Sakura says there's no sign of any damage to her bones or muscles. Her internal organs look normal too, but her chakra flow is blocked. I think it's because the tree was draining her energy. Now there might be a different translation to the word blocked here. It could be that it's low or something, so I guess we'll see when the chapter comes out. Sakura then says, as for symptoms, well, it's basically mild malnutrition. What matters now is eating properly and getting rest. Sumire says, thank goodness. And Himawari says, Moegi sensei, so she's calling her name. That's what anime characters do. They love calling the character's name for some reason. Yeah, so Moegi says, I'm sorry everyone for making you worry. Thank you, Konohamaru. And Konohamaru just tells her to hurry up and get better. Now then we have Sarada walking into the room because she wasn't there before, and Sumire looks at her and she looks away from Sumire. And then she says, hey, can we talk for a second? Now, of course, I'm not going to post the panels, okay? Clearly because they're spoilers. But they pretty much went to what I believe is the roof of the Akage office. But I could be wrong, it seems to be the same location where Boruto first returned to the village. Now, Miss Sumire then tells Sarada that she did good work out there and that the mission seemed to have been pretty tough. And Sarada says, yeah, more or less. Sarada then cuts off Sumire and says, is it okay if I call you that? Maybe. And the word that she's referring to is Sumire's actual name. And it goes back to referencing what happened in chapter 16, I believe, when she was kind of upset that they aren't calling her by her name and they still refer to her as class rep. So that panel is actually referenced in this moment. And Sumire says, yeah, it's okay. Sarada then apologizes for everything and says, I was being insensitive. And Sumire says, no, I should be the one apologizing. Saying something like that out of nowhere. It was really blunt of me. And just so you guys know, this goes on for a bit. Okay, so if you guys want to skip along, it's okay. But if you guys want to hear everything, continue listening. So yeah, Sarada says, back then I was just completely caught off guard. I didn't know how to respond. What you said was completely spot on. And even how you felt, and my own shortcomings too. I kept turning away from all those things. But then, remember, you asked me, didn't you? And then references the panel from way back when, I don't even remember the chapter, where she asked her if she doesn't care about Boruto. And of course, Sarada denied it. Sarada then says, what I said back then was how I really felt. Really? Really? Sure, Sarada, sure. But yeah, she goes on to say at that point in time anyway. I mean, I never really considered it, like having any special feelings about him or anything. But still, at some point I started spending more and more time thinking about him. And I realized just how often that had become. The feeling that I wanted to become someone who supports him. That feeling itself makes me stronger. Even the Okage, I feel like I could become one too. That's how I've come to feel. Now Sumire then says, I knew, I've known for a long time, how you feel, Sarada. It was completely obvious. Sarada then says, but that goes both ways, right? Sumire then says, thanks for being honest with me. Now that it's come to this, I'm not going to hold back anymore, Sarada then smirks and says, you know him. He's always carrying some kind of problem. Probably going through a lot, right? As a teammate in the same squad, I couldn't help but worry about him. Eventually, maybe. Am I just worried about him as a teammate? Or is it something more? And also, the fact that I'm even thinking about stuff like that, something feels really makes me feel like a failure of a person. Someone like me to even consider becoming Okage. I wonder if I'm even worthy of aiming for it. Then we get like a side panel of Yodo saying, you got it all wrong, maybe without even realizing it, you're lying to yourself, which is, the thing that triggered the Mangekyo. She then says, but I've already stopped doing that kind of thing. And then she just comes out and says it, I like Boruto too. And Sumire then says, that goes both ways. Then we skip to Ada, who is watching the entire conversation using her Senrigan because she loves to, butt into people's, conversations. And she says, this isn't a joke. Of all times, you went and did this behind my back without asking. Don't go getting all fired up and turning this into a hot topic situation. Hey, sensory captain, respond. Get me connected right now. And then we get this panel of Sarada and Sumire holding hands and running off into the sunset. And then we get the title drop that says, to those girls. Which for some reason reminded me of Korra when she ran off into the sunset with Asami. That's what I believe her name was. Maybe something similar happens with Sarada and Sumire. None of the fandoms win, okay? Sarada fandom loses and Sumire fandom loses, okay? But I guess we'll see. We then skip over to Himawari and she's in her house sitting down, seemingly meditating, but of course she's actually training with Kurama inside the mindscape. And the panels pretty much have her going back and forth with Kurama, which she ends up losing to him. And he goes on to say that, you are wrong about that. You don't understand a damn thing. It's not about throwing punches with brute strength. Don't try to leap using just your leg power. It's chakra. It all comes down to chakra control at the baseline, more than just mastering the fundamentals. Himawari then says, of course, I understand that much. I'm a ninja too, Kurama then says, no, you don't understand anything at all. But at the very least, you are no ordinary shinobi. You are one that houses a tail beast inside. No, something more. Though you are human, if I had to say, you're close to beings like me, a beast. This isn't about whether you're stylish or not. The point is strictly about the multiple stances you should be taking. This is just the beginning of your instruction. Throw away common sense. Think of yourself as the literal incarnation of chakra. Everything starts from that. Hima then says, even if you say stuff like that, none of it's sinking inside my head. And Kurama then says he's tired and that's enough for today. And of course Himawari wants him to stay, but of course, Kurama doesn't have time for all this. By the way, Boruto was outside the window watching all of this happen while Himawari was inside the mindscape. Of course, he can't see Kurama, but he knows that she has Kurama, so he understands what she's doing. And I'm not sure if this is the case, but it seems like Himawari doing the mindscape thing with Kurama gives Boruto the idea to go and talk to Momoshiki. It could have been something that he was planning the entire time. But anyways, Boruto then goes on to, talk to Momoshiki. So he sits down and starts to meditate. And the scene then changes to where Momoshiki died initially in chapter 10, which is above the divine tree. And we see that Momoshiki is just laying there at the top of it, just chilling, not doing anything. And he doesn't look different, his horns haven't grown, he's still the same Momoshiki. He then says, what does the wind blow in today? To think you'd be the one to make contact. Boruto then says, yo, freeloader, still sulking as usual, huh? Now Momoshiki then says, once again, you've managed to escape death, because you're still shamelessly clinging on to life. As you can see, I am in the depths of despair. The moment you were killed off by Kawaki, I should have left you for dead. Reincarnation also becomes impossible. The only thing my lost soul now desires is to break free from this curse and simply disappear. Boruto then says, I've got a bit of proposal for someone like you. Let's say just this once, will you lend me your strength? Momoshiki then says, don't make me laugh. Disappear. Boruto then replied saying, just hear me out. Of course I'm not asking for free. If you manage to take down Jura, then this body of mine, I'll give it all to you. And this section kinda felt a bit unnatural to me because, why would Momoshiki need to tell Boruto something he already told him about the reincarnation not being possible anymore? This is more so for the audience if they've forgotten about that, which, by the way, some people have forgotten about this, so I guess Ikimoto is reading your tweets. Now this was somewhat surprising because you'd expect that the final page would be of Momoshiki and Boruto since it's that important, but no, it's of Sumire and Sarada. So Sumire says, but Boruto himself, he probably hasn't noticed, right? or feelings or anything like that. And Sarada says, more like there's no way he'd notice. Absolutely not. Well, that's just the way Boruto is, but it's kinda nice. And then we have the side text that says, driven by his mission, he stepped onto a path of carnage. What is Momoshiki's answer to that proposal? Well, my guess is that Momoshiki is going to say absolutely not. And then what's gonna happen is that when Boruto is getting his ass whooped by Jura, then Momoshiki will speak to him and says, you know what, let's do it. Let's take out this fool because he's pissing me off or something like that. Now, I don't know where this is going, if they're gonna, find some common ground together and start to work together because Boruto starts to share his body with Momoshiki, or if Momoshiki has another plan and he's just playing Boruto, which I think is way more likely. And this goes into my Boruto is Shibai theory, which is gonna come out tomorrow or Sunday, because I didn't expect the spoilers to be released today because that video was supposed to be for today. But anyways, I hope to see you guys on the next video because it goes into the entire creation of the Naruto universe, which I believe Boruto is responsible for, and he has to go back in time to ensure that it happens. So subscribe if you haven't, and also ring the bell to be notified when that video is posted. But with that said, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.